This is the Yuanfen New Media Art Gallery, and Yuanfen is this whole idea of destiny, and so the exhibit here today is the second exhibit that we've had, and it really comes about by means of destiny, sort of like what artists happen to cross paths with this particular space and with me. And so after our first show, we had a really incredible first show with a New York artist named Joe Deebs and a Hong Kong artist named Hung Qiang. And so the question was like, what's the next show going to be? And these artists who are represented here today had seen that first show and were intrigued with the place and with the whole concept, the whole idea that this gallery represents of being a showcase for new media art. And so the first artist that came to me in the show is a guy named Yam Lau. And Yam Lau is a Hong Kong Chinese who's been living in Canada for a long time. And he does extraordinary pieces of three-dimensional video. And although he's been in the West a very long time, you can see in his pieces a very, very strong Chinese influence. He comes from a background of painting and of Asian painting, and although he uses high tech in terms of rendering these extraordinary three-dimensional experiences, they are still very Asian in their feeling. And so I'm very, very proud to be able to show those pieces. The other artist that we have, a representation of his, is Yongfeng. One of the pieces is behind me, which is a photograph. And he first showed me this photograph, and it was on an iPod, so very, very small. And I looked at it for a long time, and I said, "What? These are like little pieces of crumpled gold." And he said, "Keep looking at them." So I kept looking at it, and I said, "No, they're pieces of jewels." And he said, "Keep looking." And then I looked and looked and looked, and I said, "They're plastic bags." And he said, "Exactly." So I was so intrigued with this particular piece, and then we have another piece of his, which is a moving video piece of Chinese chess pieces, sort of floating in midair. And so his work and Yam Lau's work are very, very interesting to me in that they bring us to this place between reality and dream. This place between this world and some world we can only imagine. And then the final artist that I have here is a guy named Miachel Yuenthe. And Michael is of Chinese extraction, but he's a pure Westerner, if you will. He's from Australia and brings a very strong kind of Australian sensibility, if you will. He's very laid back, but also a real perfectionist in his work. And so the work that Michael's that we have here is something called Pulse. And Pulse is a light and sound installation. And this is a very interesting piece to me because this is an unusual space. This is not your typical gallery space. It's not, white, clean walls. It's a very quirky kind of space. And so one of the interesting elements here is a swimming pool that I built, an elevated swimming pool. And when Michael came to visit, he looked at this swimming pool and he looked underneath the swimming pool and he said, I'd really like to do a piece here. And I said, that's terrific. I've always wanted someone to really, be able to interact with the space. So the installation that Michael built underneath the swimming pool is this thing called Pulse, and it's an LED blue light which pulses at a particular rate, pulsates at a rate, and there's also this sound that accompanies it. And it is this feeling of kind of being in a womb. It's that feeling I can remember when my wife was pregnant with our babies, who are now 18 and 16 years old. And I remember going to the doctor with my wife when she was pregnant, and he would, put, besides showing us pictures through a sonogram, we'd also be able to listen to the heartbeat. And that sound of a fetal heartbeat is, one of these really extraordinary sounds, and then when you hear that, you also think, well, what is the fetus hearing? And the fetus is hearing this heartbeat of the mother. And so that's the kind of feeling that you get with pulse, because you're inside and you see this flash of blue light and this pulsating sound, and being underneath this swimming pool that has 40 metric tons of water in it. So you feel very enclosed, and yet it gives you a very, very peaceful feeling, and something that I always imagine that this is how a fetus feels, being in the womb and hearing the mother's heartbeat, and probably even seeing light flashing through. So these three pieces, or these three artists, there's a total of 6 different pieces here, but they bring together a very interesting phenomenon, I think, in terms of what new media art is, and that is it takes us, the viewers, to another place. We see it, we can feel it, it's all very real, and yet as we look at it, it makes us question sort of our own reality. And we all have this growing experience with computers and with technology, but when we see people who can create art with these things, it's really a very exciting experience. So this has been a terrific experience for me, bringing these three artists together, having their pieces have this interesting dialogue in a single space. And it's been really interesting. This is the opening today, and so having people react and seeing what people's responses are to these pieces has been a very pleasurable moment for me.